Welcome to Pause for the Truth. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Tuesday, I should say, since that's the only day the podcast is currently broadcast. Now, if you leave it up to my co host, Dr. Rogers Kane, we'd be doing this show every day. Dr. Kane, I thought about it. I said, you know what? When Dr. Kane finally decide to retire, I'll bet he's going to want to have this conversation every day. And we're probably going to be like a regular radio show. What say ye, Dr. Kane? Can't hear you, buddy. Can't hear you. Oh, we lost him. Oh, wow. Am I going to be alone tonight? Oh, here he is. Dr. Kane, say something. Still, still can't hear you. So we're going to go on until Dr. Kane works out his technical issues. So tonight we have two distinguished guests. I call them distinguished. They may not consider themselves distinguished, but I think they are. I'm going to first reintroduce to you Chief Gregory Burton, because the chief was on our show a few months ago. We were talking about, I think we talked about gang violence or what's going on with youth. That might be during the series that we really address what's going on with youth in our community. So we're super excited to have him back with us tonight. How are you doing this evening, Chief Burton?
I am wonderful, wonderful, and really glad to be here with you again.
Thank you. And, for those of us who, when I first met Chief, he was actually with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. And he's one of those people who also doesn't completely retire, because now he's Chief of Police, if I'm not mistaken, with Duval County Public Schools. So we appreciate your continued service to keeping our community safe.
Thank you so much.
And also welcome this evening our other panelist, my former coworker and friend, Gloria McNair. Now, if I began to say all the wonderful things that is in her background and experience, we wouldn't have enough time for the show. So I will let you know that Gloria has a variety, an awesome background in terms of all the wonderful things she's done and continues to do in this community. And we're so excited to have her join us. How are you doing this evening, Gloria?
I am doing great. Thank you for inviting me. And I want to say that all that I do is because I love the community and I love looking out for others. And so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Gloria, back in the day when we worked at the health department, one of the projects that she worked with actually had to do with the family planning program. And oh my goodness, Gloria has some very lively discussions for the parents and the young ladies, I recall. And so I'm sure some of that is going to come out in tonight's discussion. So while we are waiting on Dr. Kane to get back online, and I'm sure he's in the background working with our technology expert, I call him, or we all call him calltyrone.net, because he is our technology expert. I'm going to go ahead and start the discussion. So tonight we're talking about teen dating violence. Why did we decide to embark upon this discussion? That's because it's teen dating violence awareness and prevention. Now, as we grow up, if we look back, as any of you who are parents, you're probably thinking, well, I didn't have that problem when I was growing up, because Joker tried to get with me. I set him straight. Well, unfortunately, times have changed. Situations have changed. Personalities are different. Some people are more timid. Some are just not confrontational, while on the other hand, some are. Some youth see things in their home and they think that's normal behavior. And so they then will start doing some of those same things. So we decided to talk about teen dating violence. Well, I decided to do my homework and I read some interesting statistics, and I'm not sure how current this is, but it says 1 in 4 adolescents reports verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual dating violence each year. In high school who have been in relationships. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in teen boys have been in relationships have experienced physical and or sexual dating violence. Now, I just like to pose the question to either of our guests. I'm just going to be blunt, and I don't want you to get personal. I just want you to say, from your professional experience, have you ever known anyone, or has anyone ever shared with you, a young person, that they had experienced teen dating violence?
Miss McNair, I'll go first. Yes, I can tell you yes, in my experience, and this is a little personal. It probably was 14, almost 15 years ago. My daughter herself, my oldest daughter, did experience dating violence with a young man. I use that term very loosely. That she was dating. And I tell you, it was a tough situation. And as a father, um, it became very personal. And I was a police officer at the time as well. And so when you experience something like that, your police officer hat goes out of the window and you become a father. And I can remember walking with her through that process. And so I'll just leave that at that comment. And then as we go on in the conversation, I can tell you other things that transpire.
You know, earlier I was talking to Dr. Kane, and Gloria, I'm going to let you answer the question. Dr. Kane and I were talking, and he was saying back in the day, people were too afraid to do anything. They were afraid of fathers. And so it's just imagine, I mean, it just blows my mind. I wish Dr. Kane was on. He'll join us and we can pick back up on this. Knowing that you were a police officer did not deter that young man from doing what he was doing with your daughter. That's just amazing to me. The
Well,
whole notion that the fear was not there.
well, the fear wasn't there because it was long distance. I'm from Louisiana,
Oh,
and my daughter was in Louisiana at the time. And when she finally called me and told me about it, um, and I called his father. And so at that time, he realized it was real. The son realized it was real because I was going to Louisiana, and he actually left and went to Texas because you're right. As you would think that me being a law enforcement officer, but he realized I was a law enforcement officer and he left. So
okay. So fear did kick in.
it did kick in.
Hmm. Welcome back, Dr. Kane. Gloria, have you ever been approached by a young person saying that they've been experiencing teen dating violence?
I'm going to tell you, they never really approached me directly saying, Miss Gloria, I'm going through this, but I would observe it, when I would teach classes. I taught classes at Duval County Public Schools, and
Yeah.
a lot of classes also at Job Corps, and they have a young adult group there. And I would see the way the guys would grab on the girls and the way that they talk to them, the way they touch them. And I started incorporating teen dating violence into my classes because I was telling these young ladies that it was unacceptable because they sometimes thought it was kind of cute. Oh, he just loves me. That's the way he's expressing his feelings. And sometimes it was the way that girls treated other girls. There were girls who dated girls there, and they were just rough with each other. And I was like, what has happened? I do think, though, I don't have any proof of this, but I do think that some of this violence did exist previously. It just went underreported. Whether people were ashamed, they didn't want to get their boyfriend or girlfriend in trouble, because boys can be victims of teen dating violence as well. I just want to put that out there. And I think some of it was a little fear and some of it not wanting to get the other person in trouble. And I'm glad that paradigm has changed, that people realize that they can report what's happening to them.
Yeah, and thank you, Gloria. When we talk about teen dating violence, dating violence can be any one or a combination of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse is what I call it. And so I know when we have those conversations, and to even have this conversation tonight, it's probably not something that parents even thought about asking their kids. Of course, when you were little, you're told if anybody hits you, you hit them back, right? When you're a little kid, when you're able to go outside and start playing, old enough to go outside and start playing with your peers. However, do parents move to the next step as their children age and say, as you start interacting with your peers or dating, getting a little boyfriend or girlfriend, that this behavior of being abused physically, emotionally, and sexually, and nowadays they have social media. So when you talk about dating violence, that's another element that has been brought to the equation. Dr. Kane, is there anything you'd like to ask of our guests? I don't want to hog the show up as
I'm
I
not sure.
often do.
Can you hear me? You hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Kane.
Oh, okay. No, you guys go on with the conversation. I was enjoying the conversation. I could hear you guys. I just couldn't say anything. So that was a good thing because I heard a lot of stuff that I didn't know. So you guys are educating me this evening. So go ahead.
So,
Yes. I have, my personal experience with my daughter, but professionally, I have to approach these things as a law enforcement officer. And so for the guest and for those that are watching the podcast, I would just like for you I'm going to read for you the Florida state statute that involves dating violence. And it could be a little bit, not ambiguous, but you could probably get the impression that, no, this doesn't affect that relationship or the relationship with my child. But let me just read it. So it says dating violence. It is state statute 784.046, subsection 1, subsection D as in Delta. And it says dating violence means violence between individuals who have had or have a continuing and significant relationship of a romantic or intimate nature. The existence of such a relationship shall be determined based on the consideration of the following factors. 1, a dating relationship must have existed within the past 6 months. 2, the nature of the relationship must have been characterized by the expectations of affections of sexual involvement between the parties. And 3, the frequency and type of interaction between the persons involved in the relationship must have included that the persons have been involved over time on a continuous basis during the course of the relationship. Now, what can be misleading about this is what you can do to bring charges, but it doesn't mean you have to wait 6 months or for something to happen. The issue is, what can we do before it gets to that point? And when it gets to the point as it relates to the state statute, then it's time to really file charges, get an injunction, and things of that other nature. But I just wanted to bring out that is the state statute for it. But our goal here on the show here is to bring forth information. Hopefully it won't get to that.
Yeah, and the interesting part about that, though, when you think about, that whole time frame or the length of how long you've been involved with someone, nowadays, it makes you wonder, when was that statute written? All the new elements like social media that has now, that has to play a factor, because we know that a lot of things that young people do, they'll post pictures, intimate photographs of one another online. So at what point then does the law match the current state of affairs or situations that people find themselves in? I looked online on the Florida Department of Health and Duval County Public Schools, and it's not just local, this is a national initiative. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey is done in each county. And I looked at the Youth Behavior Survey from 2019, and the demographic information rather around violence was interesting. One of the things that it talked about youth who've experienced dating violence, physical dating violence in the county. Now, they've broken it down to health zones. The health department years ago divided the city up into health zones. And so there are different areas of town, and I'm not going to get into that because I will suggest that people just simply Google 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Survey, and they'll see the data. But in terms of dating violence, 11% of high schoolers said they were ever forced to have sexual intercourse. 9% experienced sexual dating violence. When someone you are dating, they were asked, when someone you are dating forces you to do sexual things that you do not want to do, such as kissing, touching, or being physically forced to have sexual intercourse. Now, 9% in the past 12 months. Now, I always look at it and say 9% might seem low, but to me, that should be zero, right? 12% have experienced physical dating violence when someone you are dating physically hurts you on purpose, such as being hit, slammed into something, or injured with an object or weapon. And when we talk about dating violence, 8% of males, 14% of females. So I was glad, Gloria, that you mentioned that boys or males also experience dating violence or violence. And also let's see, some more of the data talked about the whole sexual orientation in terms of the things that kids are experiencing. Of course, Chief, being in school, having to break up fights, the school resource officers having to break up fights, but you never know what the underlying reasons are that cause the fights. And we can't make the assumption that it might not have to do with, a lot of times, we'll say if it's girls fighting, they're fighting over a boy. But it could be, in fact, of what Gloria said, those two girls might be dating. And we just don't know what's going on. But I think the point of our discussion is that parents need to make sure they are having a conversation with their children. Now, going on to violence, the statistics also ask children if they felt safe or unsafe going to school or on their way home from school. Who would think that we need to have that type of conversation with our youth, right? With our young people, but it's real. And Chief Burden, I'm sure you can even talk about that more than I can.
It is real, and going back and forth. And let me just hit on real quick. I asked one of my sergeants preparing to come on to your show. Asked my sergeant and said, do we have a lot of dating violence in school? And he immediately said, absolutely, we do. He said, we write a lot of reports, just like in any other school district, about fights that are going on. But he said a lot of the fights, as you said, Ms. Turner, are a result of young people going into the social media and expressing whatever led up to the fight, and then they're coming back fighting. And he said a lot of times it's because a person believes that another person is in a dating violent situation, and they're bringing that out, and that person now becomes embarrassed and aggravated, agitated, and wants to fight. And this is a fight that goes between girls, and whereas those girls a lot of times have been friends, but because now this one has brought out this situation about the dating, and she said, Chief, it happens more than you think. And so and I found that very interesting. And then I started doing other research and asking other officers, and they verified that. But the question about being able to walk back and forth to school, and you could used to be able to walk a mile to school, and by yourself. You had kids that were 7, 8 years old walking to school. But now there's a fear of not just being bullied in the community, there's a fear of people that don't know you doing something to you. And it's a very real thing.
I remember years ago, one of mine, Gloria, I'm gonna ask you a question about, so stay tuned. But I remember years ago, and I'm gonna not try to give too many descriptives of the scenario, but a friend said to me that a young lady, a girl, accused her son of touching her inappropriately. And just so happened, my friend was an active parent in her son's school. The the staff and everyone knew the family, and because they were active with their boys at the school. Well, as the school personnel and the school resource officer identified or kept investigating, having conversations, calling the parents to the school or whatever, the young person who allegedly witnessed this occurrence finally spoke up and said, "That's not true. It didn't happen. She was just mad because she liked him and he told her he didn't like her like that." And so you think about how that could have changed the trajectory of that child's life had that other young lady not spoken up to say it didn't happen. And I'm sure a lot of that happened. Gloria, I'd like to share, to kind of do a switch, because I know you've been involved in some healthy relationships. So what do you think we need to say to our young people as they are thinking they're old enough to start dating, and to learn how to develop healthy relationships?
I'm glad you asked that question, because there are things that we can talk to our teens about before it ever gets to that physical level. Even when the person is trying to flirt with them a little bit. And you can look for things like manipulation. You talk to your child about having their own mind and not having someone else manipulate them so much, trying to be controlling, because one of the first steps right there to an unhealthy relationship. Unhealthy relationships, that's the root of what happens with the intimate partner violence. Guilting. The other partner will always make the person feel guilty, about being with other people, having other friends. That's a red flag. Just talking to our kids about these red flags, being the possessiveness. No, you have to walk with me. You have to go with me. No, you can't hang out with your friend. You I'm calling you at 6 o'clock, be by the phone, or make sure you have your cell phone on you and have it charged because I'm calling you. That type of possessiveness is a red flag. Belittling people, I see that all the time. I see that grows into adulthood too. Where one partner may put the other one down to make them not feel as attractive, not to make them not feel as smart as they really are. And we have to talk to our sons and our daughters about that being an unhealthy habit and a red flag for something that they don't want in their lives. And there are 10 of them. There's a site that I'm partnered with called One Love, and they have 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship. But there's just one more I would like to go over, and that's betrayal. And that leads to the social media, posting photos of you, maybe intimate photos, or just photos that belittle the person. Oh, I don't know why she wore this today. Oh, what kind of haircut is that? And this is someone that you're supposed to care about. These are some of the things that we should talk to parents about. another thing, and I don't, you know, Jocelyn, I can be wordy too. We have to model the behavior that we want for our children, because most of these kids who get involved in intimate partner violence, they see it at home. They may see their dad pushing mom around. They may see mom slapping dad upside the head or being verbally abusive. Your daddy ain't no good. He never did that. Those are not healthy behaviors. And we have to model what we want our children to learn. And it really starts at home.
And I'm glad you said that. Go ahead, Dr. Kelly.
I was going to say some of those same kids, like you say, when they get on, they get to school, they need to take out that pent up rejection of that behavior in terms of aggression toward others, and so you see a lot of it because, like you say, what they see at home, they yeah, sometimes they imitate, but other times it's just their way of venting and getting rid of the frustrations that they have about whatever is going on at their home. I did notice on that same website that you talked about, Jocelyn, that the Duval County website, when they did the 2019 study, 18%, almost 20% of those kids were being bullied on school property. And I know, Chief, you've seen it, and probably, I mean, had to deal with it both up front and from some of your officers, as well as Ms. McNair. You probably, many of the situations that you run into and you were counseling, the situation, I'm gonna say, started on campus. At least the violent part, the physical part, may have started on campus. How do you guys deal with that when it gets to be a difficult path to matriculate without getting yourself caught up in some possibility of your own professional and personal harm? And I'm gonna say it this way: I noticed in the news last week that was a school personnel. And we're not going to talk about them in particular, but I'm just saying the situation that tried to break up a fight and between some girls, and they got caught up in the middle. So, and then there's it's been across the broadcast that they did this, that, or the other. Of course, without seeing the whole situation, the whole film as it was, but being afraid to intervene as a chief, maybe as an officer. Resource officers, some of them, they got to be careful with it. They have to interact with those kids. And then as a school teacher and or counselor, the way you interact with them so that you have to protect yourself. Has that been an issue for either one of you guys at some point in your past?
Well, no, what we do, we try to train our officers to enter into somewhat partnerships with the young people. And when I say partnerships, provide respect to them and they provide respect to you. And then you develop a relationship. And through that relationship, then you can talk about certain things, not too in depth with the young people, to bring out what they may be experiencing. For instance, if you observe a young person that has now been shamed in front of other people, you can go to that person and say, hey, is anything going on with you? Are you dating so-and-so? And as Ms. McNair said, shaming people in public is a sign of possible abuse. So we try to create a relationship with the young people, but there are limitations on what that relationship should be. And I won't mention that incident that happened because I'm intimately involved, but I understand what you're saying. But two things from the conversation previously: bullies actually often become bullies. And a lot of times it's because when they're bullied, they want to take out that aggression on someone that they may believe is a weaker person, or someone that they are now trying to control, because the dating violence has a lot to do with control of that individual based on a lot of the things, the warning signs that Ms. McNair brought out. And then additionally, we have to, as Doc, what you said, we have to mimic that behavior. My son, we have an 11-year-old now, and I actually, based on what this title was, I asked him earlier in the week. I said, "Hey," because he has what he calls his little girlfriend, and they go skating every weekend, and they go to other little entertainment with all of their friends. And I asked him point blank, because I have a relationship with him. I've developed this relationship, and I said, "Hey, are you nice to," and I called the young lady. He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, is she nice to you?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay." And then I went on to talk to him about some of the things that we're talking about now. And to me, those warning signs, the antithesis of those warning signs, are the good things that you should be doing to breed those healthy relationships. Say, for instance, if someone is being jealous and controlling, I said, "Hey, do you care if she plays with her other friends or some of your friends?" He was like, "I don't care." And so that lets me know that that is a healthy relationship. And then some other questions that I will ask him as well.
So I was just looking at, for those of you who are just chiming in, I just wanted to read something. If you're just chiming in for the evening, we're talking about teen dating violence. Also called dating violence is an adverse childhood experience that affects millions of young people in the United States. Dating violence can take place in person, online, or through technology. It is a type of intimate partner violence that can include physical, sexual, psychological aggression, stalking. 26% of women and 15% of men experienced intimate partner violence for the first time before age 18. Now think about that. All of you have children. Just think about that, knowing that your babies, before they turn 18 years of age, they potentially could have experienced some type of dating violence. I don't know about you, but that's hurtful to hear. And then to also think about that the fact that some of these, I was reading something and it talked about oftentimes this leads to violence as an adult. For folks who either experience it or who start being the aggressor at a young age, unfortunately, they grow into being those same type of adults and get even worse in their behaviors. And so that's pretty alarming to me. So I think it is very important, as Gloria talked about, the importance to start having conversations at a young age to talk about, as you did, Chief, what a healthy relationship looks like.
And you're right, Mrs. Turner. It becomes, at this age, it's dating violence, and then it becomes domestic violence. Yeah. As we get older, and you're right.
That's true. Gloria, so what should parents do? They're listening to this show tonight and they're like, "Oh my goodness." So where do you think they should start? I know the Chief, he talked about it, we all, as we have these shows, have this conversation. I'm not an expert in this topic, so I did my homework and pulled up some statistics. But if I were a parent and, and I have a young person in my life, what should I say? Should I just have the basic question that the Chief has? For instance, if they have a little boyfriend or girlfriend, tell me about that relationship, and not make the assumption that I know what the goings on are within that situation.
I think Chief Burton, I wish I had a dad like him. That's awesome.
I know, right?
You're awesome. So, and everything that he is doing is just perfect, and maybe not, first of all, is establishing that trust with your child, that your child has to know that if they tell you something, that you're not going to just fly off the handle and just have, just go crazy with it. They need to trust that you're going to hear them believe in them, and act accordingly, and maybe, not say that you're going to go and beat this guy up, but that you're listening. So before I was talking about the unhealthy signs, so maybe we should tell the kids what's healthy, like having respect. That's one of the very first things that should be established. And I think sometimes in order to teach a child what respect looks like, we have to respect them and then make sure that they respect us in return. And talk about good communication. And that's one of the things that's establishing our relationship with them, how we communicate and make them realize that their partner, their friends should treat them the same way and listen to them and hear them, that they have that good communication skill going on. And building trust. You cannot have a relate, and I, gosh, you all, I tell adult women this and adult men, because Jocelyn knows about my girl parties that we used to have, female only get-togethers and talks. Establishing that trust and making sure you can trust your partner, that your partner can trust you, that your friends are trustworthy. And it's easy. You find out really quick when they start sharing information that you told them to trust. And honesty, being very honest. If you're that best friend, that guy or girl who's trying to get with you, they need to be honest. And if when a person shows you who they are, believe them. Who said that? I can't remember who it was.
Maya
Someone.
Angelou.
Yes. Yes. So teach your children that. Don't just think it's a fluke or something. That's probably who they really are. Just be
Yeah.
aware of that. And equality.
Listen,
Equality, we should be equal in relationships, those days of the guy telling the girl what to do are over. But I'm going to tell you that's stereotyping, because I was the first one to say that men can be victims too. I'm a retired naval officer, and I was stationed with the Marines. And I'll try to make this quick, Jocelyn. There was a young Marine who would come in and look like we thought he was in a fight club or something, because he would come in with bruises and stuff. And he finally told us, and I think he trusted us because we were sailors and he didn't think we would judge him. His wife was kicking his behind at home. And so, yes. And so I just want parents to be observant about things like that, because I want to talk about some of the consequences of this teen violence. If your child starts acting depressed or feeling or acting with a lot of anxiety, that may be a sign that something is going on. You suspect that they are, started doing drugs. They may, your alcohol bottle looks a little low. They may just be smoking cigarettes. That would be a sign that something is going on. If they've all of a sudden become kind of antisocial, the people whom they used to hang out with, they don't have time with those old friends anymore. They're not doing the things that they used to do. They're always in their room on their cell phone with whoever. That's a sign that there's something going on. And please be careful, parents, because teens involved in this intimate partner violence often feel suicidal because they don't know what to do, and they don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to trust. So just be aware of that. And once again, I'll be quiet now.
And Ms.
I was
McNary,
looking. Go ahead, Chief.
and I mean, you're spot on with all of that. And I'll just add to that a couple of things. In our profession, and if you're not a parent, we have to create safe spaces for young people that may come to us, and they may come to us and befriend us before they befriend their parents or their guardians. So we have to create safe spaces for them. And I'll say this to young people that may be in a relationship: there's nothing wrong with you setting a standard of consent. Say, for instance, if someone wants to kiss you, I'm telling you, when I was growing up, my mother actually put my brother and I in a courtesy type school for 6 weeks. We had to take these courses. to become gentlemen, and we did what was called a botillion, where you exercise your gentleman-like, the learning that you had. And so we were raised to ask, hey, do you mind if I kiss you? That sounds weird, but no is no. And then you have to establish, either boys, girls, young men, young women, whomever, you should establish boundaries in the beginning. Look, this is what I'm expecting from this relationship. And this is what you can expect from me, because this is not what I'm willing to do. And so,
Yeah, as you were talking, I was looking online because oftentimes we don't know what those red flags are and I'll say dating violence or intimate partner and violence, as Gloria says, excessive jealousy or insecurity, invasions of your privacy, unexpected bouts of anger or rage, unusual moodiness, pressuring a partner into unwanted sexual activity, blaming you for problems in the relationship and not taking any responsibility for the same, controlling tendencies. We already talked about that. Explosive temper, preventing you from going out with or talking to other people. How many times we've all seen something like that, right? Constantly monitoring your whereabouts and checking in to see what you're doing and who you are with. That was to the point of saying that, I'm going to call you at 6 o'clock and you need to be by the phone, falsely accusing you of things, vandalizing or ruining your personal property, taunting or bullying, or threatening or causing physical violence. All of those things are warning signs, and it's real conversations that we need to have. Now, I also like to talk about what do we do if, for any of our listeners, if you think you are in an abusive relationship, and you already mentioned it, one of you, reach out to a trusted friend, teacher, parent, or mentor. And that's something, Chief, when you talked about making sure that youth know that they have a safe space, somebody that they can trust, somebody that, like you are about to take that trip to Louisiana. You have to know that there are some steps that you should take prior to going there, because you don't want to go there and then you're in trouble, right? So
right,
think
exactly.
about those steps. Reach out to a trusted friend, spending more time with individual who you are comfortable with, getting involved with activities you will enjoy that will allow you to associate with positive people. Seek the guidance of a school counselor or therapist. And there's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. It is an important number that we should remember and should know. And also, don't have the attitude, I don't know anybody who's in a situation like this, because just as sure as you say it, within the next week, it may be a coworker, it may be
Right.
someone else who has a niece or nephew or someone who's experiencing this. And you can say, oh my goodness, I just heard that the other day. I wrote the number down just in case. And I'm going to mention it again, 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. And studies have found that negative or abusive behaviors in unhealthy relationships are more likely to increase over time. So people shouldn't think that, those cute things of, oh, he just wants to know where I'm going, or, he loves spending time with me. Every time we're out, no, that's all. And Gloria, I think you mentioned it. That's all controlling behavior. So we have to understand and teach our young people what safe relationships are. When I was doing my homework, and I encourage parents to do your homework like I did, there's a program that the Centers for Disease Control has called Dating Matters. It is a resource that I think, if you don't know how to have the conversation with the young people in your life, it's a resource that you could go to. But there are all sorts of programs or for youth around town. I think of Journey into Womanhood. I think of Girls Inc. and Gloria, help me out. Tell me about, and even the fraternities have programs for boys that they can be a part of. Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I mean, just so many
Betty
different
Burney's
programs.
Betty Burney's
I'm a
program.
star. Uh-oh, thank you for mentioning it because Miss Bernie
Yes.
would surely get me. I'm a star program. A few months ago,
And
we
a
had,
shout out to my job. Groundwork Jacksonville has our
oh yeah.
green team, another good program for youth.
So there are all
And
sorts of
and
programs.
the Anna B. Ruth Foundation as well.
Yep, yep. All sorts of good programs for youth to be a part of. The Center for Child Rights, by the way, Betsy Dobbins and her crew, they're doing a good job advocating for the rights of children. And so if you don't know which way to go with stuff, know, parents, that there are resources. And again, if you don't know where to start, check with your school counselor, your
Let
child's
me
school counselor.
let me
And
ask the chief and Miss McNair, you can tune in as well. But chief, so let me give you a scenario. I got one of those kids somewhere between 11 and 15, and they're experiencing this, but they don't know who to go talk to. What advice would you, if let's say if the parents or those kids are listening tonight, who would you direct them to if they don't feel like they don't know who to go to?
right. So if they don't know who to go to, it really is. If they don't know who to go to, it's up to the parents then to be observant. And in being observant, all of those different warning signs we talked about, and then you cannot then treat your child's situation or intimidate your child the way they've been intimidated in an abusive relationship, because they will turn you off. So once again, that safe space, and then we have to take them seriously, because if a child feels like they can't come to someone, it may be because they don't feel like that person will take them seriously. And that's one of the biggest issues why young people don't come to adults, whether it's your parent or your guardian. And I think recent studies have even hinted to that. Young people want to be taken more seriously when they bring you their issues, because these days young people don't talk much. But when they bring you something, we have to listen, and not just listen with these, but listen with this, with your heart, to understand they are really going through something if they say they are.
And what about if it's the parents that might be part of the problem? Miss Miss McNair, what's your thought on that?
Oh gosh, that trusted person. But I do want to add another
Yeah.
helpline. I know Jocelyn mentioned an important one, but also the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline. And that number is 1-866-331-9474. And I'll repeat it. It's the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline, 1-866-331-9474. And sometimes for a teen, it can be a trusted counselor at school. When we were doing, when I was with the Florida Department of Health, and I would go in and do classes on abstinence or teen pregnancy prevention, oftentimes those children then saw me as a trusted adult. And I had some pretty deep conversations with them. I always told them that if I felt that if they were in a situation where they were going to be harmed, I would have to take it to an authority, but they kind of wanted someone to do that. They wanted, they may not have felt comfortable doing that, but confiding in me, knowing that I was going to bring it to the attention of someone who was of authority and could and make something happen, that made the difference. And the chief already mentioned it. Even if you're not a parent yourself, you can still be that adult role model that they can go to in life and confide in, that you can be trustworthy and be someone that that teen can trust, because sometimes there are not very many places for them to go. unless they have a good friend, and that's if there are any young people listening in, or someone who wants to talk to their teen about being a good friend will notice that these things are going on and be able to talk to them and say, we need to tell someone what's happening. You need to tell your mom, your dad, your aunt, your grandmother. Having a good friend who you can trust, who exhibits all those positive, healthy relationship attributes is also important.
I know as
And
a
you know,
physician in my younger days when I had younger patients, much younger patients, I always reached out to them, tried to reach out to them and let them know that they can come and talk to me. I usually talk to the parent first and make sure that I could have that conversation with them. And there was no reason for parents to say no usually. So, if they said no to me, then I probably put them up under the microscope, the magnifying glass. But just for those physicians who are still seeing young patients, make sure that they are aware that they can be a resource for those patients.
That is what I must admit. That is one thing that I'm happy about now. Even when I go to the doctor, they say, "Do you feel safe at home?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But it's so good that that question is part of the whole questionnaire that you do with your physician now, because
Yeah,
there are all kinds of things that are happening in the home. But you were doing it before it was like
right. Before it was
the
popular.
yes.
Chief, you're on mute.
and I can't leave without saying that in the Duval, one of the things that it impressed me when I came to work for the Duval County public school district was the amount of love and care these teachers and paras and the coaches and the district people have for these students. They're students, but they're our children. They are with them 7, 8 hours a day, and they probably know more about them than a lot of their parents. But the
Yep.
love I have seen them exhibit, and coming from a career in law enforcement where I see the worst or have seen the worst, but to come into an environment that there's a lot of love. These teachers, they spend so much of their own money and to provide for these children and their own resources and the love that they give. And I think it's a big shout out to them, because honestly, I couldn't do it. I have a master's in education, and I thought about teaching after retirement, but I went in the classroom a couple of times. I said, I'm just going to stay a police officer, because
Well,
they have a
you say stay
tough,
at a safe
tough
job.
job.
Stay
But the
with a safe
love that
job.
they exhibit, though, it's amazing. I tell our superintendent all the time, look, we have 129,000 students in our system, 13,000 employees, 150 to 200,000 parents and guardians. Something's going to happen every day, but it's such a small percentage. There's so much good that's going on. And these young people can go to any number of people, hopefully in their schools. And just from the school police department, if any parents are listening, any students are listening, you can come to us. We will lend an ear. We will hear you. And I'll just say one other thing before we get off. Young ladies, young men, whether you're dating, whatever your dating is like, remember, you cannot change a person. If a person is exhibiting these signs, you cannot change that person. And people, our students, our kids, they want to think that they can make someone better. That person may need professional help, or they may need additional parenting, but you can't change that person. And I'll just leave that with the parents and the young students.
I agree. I think you can't make them change. You can try and, to help them to whatever it is you can do. But again, that's not that student's forte. They need to leave that for the experts like you guys to see if you can help change some of their behavior by, hook, crook, or steal, whatever it may be that you guys usually do to make that happen. And I have to concur with you, Chief. I have to give a shout out to the school teachers. I mean, there's several professions that I feel are just grossly underpaid, underserved as far as what they do in life and what they provide for us as a community. And that would be our veterans and our teachers. I mean, it's just so underpaid with what they do and putting their life out there on the line, their careers on there. When I say their life, sometimes it's really bang, bang, shoot 'em up life. But other parts is those kids get into their lives and the safety of them just dealing with their family is gone. They're dealing with a whole lot of other families, a whole lot of other people issues. It becomes part of them mentally and sometimes, and physically as well. And it's a tough road to hoe. And I'm glad I'm not a school teacher, be quite frank.
Well, I think we've had a great discussion tonight. It's a topic, an area, quite frankly, that, admittedly, I've never really delved into, and I learned a lot. And I hope that our listeners have also learned, because it is a conversation that we should have, talk about our young people, and recognizing that if you don't think they're mature enough to drive your car or to go to work every day, then they're probably not mature enough to be in a relationship as strong as they think they should be. There are appropriate relationships you should have, as the chief talked about with his own son, in terms of going out, going skating and other activities with a group. And there are other activities that we want to, as adults, to help our young people navigate, to make sure they don't get into situations over their head. Monitor the things that they're watching, even on social media, and limiting screen time. I know that was one thing we always talked about at the health department, that we should limit screen time, the amount of time our young people are on their computers, their cell phones, their video games, really making sure that we engage in family activities of togetherness. I know the chief, last time when Dr. Kane talked about the chief being, or that was Tyrone talked about the chief being on, he was in his car, because I think he was at a ball game or something with one of his kids. So those are the type of things that we need to make sure that we continue to engage in getting our youth engaged. We're nearing the end of the show, and at the end of, go ahead.
Let me say this. We need to go back to some of that old-fashioned learning and old-fashioned behavior. Remember when we were kids, our parents would come in the house and say, go outside and play. And, the first thing we go is, it's too hot out there. I don't care. Find something to do. Go outside. I don't care what they just made you go outside. I think we need to get back to some of that and get away from those screens and increase their physical activity, yada, yada, yada. The rest of the benefit for that. But.
Absolutely. As we end near the end of our show, we like to give our guests an opportunity to share some final thoughts relative to the discussion. Or Gloria, in your case, I know you're always doing something with Groundworks Jacksonville. If there's anything you'd like to announce that you all are doing. So Gloria, I'm going to start with you. What are your final thoughts regarding today's discussion and any announcements of any activities that you're doing?
Well, I'm going to chime in with the doctor here. Get outside, enjoy yourself. That's what Groundwork Jacksonville is all about. We're building the Emerald Trail, 30 miles of trail connecting folks. We've already started cleaning up McCoy's Creek. We're starting on the designs with Hogan's Creek. Get kids involved. I mentioned the green team. Kids get to enjoy the outdoors. I also have a program called Crest. Get in touch with us and see how your kids can be involved in doing something other than being on the computer all night.
Thank you. And we'll make sure we include your information on our website. And Chief Burton, we're going to go ahead and when you're not campaigning with your wife, our next sheriff, what's your final thoughts for tonight? And is there anything that you'd like to share that's coming up?
Just two things. One, students, if you're experiencing something, tell someone. Teens, tell someone. Parents, listen to your teens, and guardians, listen to your teens. And if you're in a profession that you are working with teens, listen to them, because they are probably telling you the truth. And then finally, there's an app that we have that was created out of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy. And so it's a tip app, and it's called Fortify Florida, Fortify FL, rather, Fortify FL, and it's an app. You can download it. We get all types of tips on that, and mainly we get tips about kids who are threatening violence, but we get a lot of tips about young people who they have found that someone is trying to commit suicide or complete suicide. And so I would recommend that if you're having an issue of dating violence, use that tip line, because all of those tips come directly to me and certain people that I have designated throughout the county, and we address every one of those tips very, very professionally and very, very seriously. So those are the things that I would like to leave for you today.
Is that anonymous? Is that tip line anonymous, or how?
Yes, it is. You can either put your name in it, but it is designed to be anonymous. You can leave pictures on it and all types of things.
Well, Ms. Turner, I know usually you're going to say, okay, Dr. Kane, you got your last couple of words. So I will intervene since I was so late this evening in terms of getting into things. I would have to agree with both of our guests. And, I'll just sum it up by saying, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something to those people who can make a difference. And they may save your or your friend's life, your loved one that, whether it's your sister or your brother that, something is going on and they're not telling mom or dad, but you saw it, go tell. I think my sisters and brothers used to call me they didn't call me a snitch at that time because that wasn't a popular word, but old tattletale, because if I saw it and it wasn't right, I had to go tell, to stop them from doing what it was. And still here today, they didn't kill me and I didn't get killed doing some things I ain't having in the business. So it works.
Yes.
So today, thank you, Dr. Kane. This evening's discussion was an important one. Thank you, Chief Burton, for sharing the app. While Dr. Kane was talking, I downloaded the Fortify FL tip reporting app on my phone. Not that I'm a young person, but I may see something, and I'm going to say something, by the way. So it is something that we need to make sure that we do. We don't like leaving without first thanking our guests for joining us as we shared this or had a discussion on a very important topic of teen dating violence. But because we are still living in a pandemic, we also have to remind our guests that if you have not gotten vaccinated, please do so. All of us want to resume some sense of normalcy, life before March 2020. Although we hear COVID-19, 19 is significant because it is the year that the COVID virus was made apparent to the world. So we all look forward to spring break coming up, summer vacations. Let's get vaccinated. If you don't know where to go to vaccines.gov. If you're in the state of Florida listening, go to the Florida Department of Health's website and you will find a list of places to go and get vaccinated. But please make sure, even if you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, that you still wear your mask, you wash your hands, you maintain safe space as far as social distancing when you're inside a crowded place as much as you can, or if you're eating indoors, it's safer for you to eat outdoors. But I know that we're going to do the things that we enjoy doing, at least if you're eating indoors, that you are safely spaced from other parties and that you know the status of the people that you're eating with. Thank you all for listening tonight. And Dr. Kane raised his finger as though he was in church. or in
Correct.
school? Go ahead, Dr.
School,
Kane.
yeah, we were talking about school. I had to be like the school. Just two things before we get off. I want to talk about next week's program. Next week's program should be very controversial, maybe, if you want to call it that. We're going to talk about. It's not going to be a critical race theory show, but it will be discussing race and the so-called critical race theory and the issues that we're having along that line in terms of how it is mentally affecting us as a people. So that's next week's show. And then we can't get offline or get off the air without thanking our technical guru, the person that helps makes this show what it is. If without him, it won't be on the air. And that is calltyrone.net. For any of your technical issues and services that you may need, call my man Tyrone.
Thank you, Dr. Kane, and thank you all for listening, and tune in next week for Pause for the Truth as we tell you what's really going on. Stay well and safe. Good evening.
Thank you.